Today we're going to talk about circles, finding the circumference and the area of circles. You may need to pause here and fill in the blanks on your notes that are written in red here, but I'll just briefly go over them. Diameter is the distance across a circle. It is a line that goes through the center. It is this green line right here. Radius is the distance from the center to the side of the circle. It is half of the diameter, and it's that purple line there. Circumference is the distance around the circle. It's kind of like perimeter, and it's this blue, like the line that makes a circle. We have two formulas to find the circumference of a circle, and they are circumference equals pi times diameter, pi d, or circumference equals 2 times pi times r. And that's 2 times pi times the radius, 2 pi r. Now, pi is a ratio between the circumference and the diameter of a circle. So a long time ago, these ancient geometricians, they realized that if they measured a circle's circumference and they divided it by the diameter of a circle, it always came out to this weird number, 3.14159, and this number just kept going. And this is what we call pi. Okay, it's an irrational number, which means it can't be written as a fraction. And we usually will approximate it to 3.14 or 22 over 7. Okay, those don't equal pi, but we use them as approximations. So you may need to pause here to finish filling out the vocabulary. And then let's go on to our first example. Example 1, an irrigation sprinkler waters a circular region with a radius of 14 feet. Let's underline that. And let's find the circumference, underline that, of a region watered by the sprinkler. And we're going to use 3.14 for pi. So for my visual learners, it's really important that we draw what this looks like, especially when we have word problems. So here's a circle, kind of a rough circle. And it has a radius of 14 feet. Remember that a radius is half the distance across a circle from the center to the side. And so since we have a radius, we want to use the formula C equals 2 pi r. And we'll just fill in what we know. 2 times 3.14, because we're using 3.14 for pi, times our radius, which is 14. And we're really just going to multiply all that together. It's that simple. 87.92 feet. Make sure you are labeling your numbers. It's really important that you are labeling your numbers. If not, I'm taking credit off of that on a quiz. So be careful with that. Okay, let's move on to example 2. A circle has a diameter of 23.6 meters. What is its circumference? And this time we're going to do something interesting. We're going to write this answer in terms of pi. Okay? And basically all that means is that pi is in the answer. Okay, so let's draw that circle. Looks like that. And diameter is the distance across. So that's 23.6 meters. And since we have a diameter here, let's use the pi times diameter formula. Okay, and you might be wondering when we use each one. Well, if you notice, they really are kind of the same formula. Pi times diameter is the same as saying 2 times pi times the radius, because think about diameter is the entire distance across the circle, radius is half of that. So over here where we have this 2 pi r, we're multiplying the 2 times the radius to get a diameter. So they eventually give you the same answer. All right, since we're writing in terms of pi, all we're doing here is just replacing the diameter d with 23.6, and we're calling it a day. And make sure you put your meters. And that's it. So when I say to write it in terms of pi, make sure pi is in your answer. Don't move forward and multiply 23.6 times 3.14. Just leave it as 23.6 pi. Okay, let's look at our last example, and we're going to apply some circumference here. We're going to do an application of circumference. So a round swimming pool has a circumference of 662.54 feet, and Carlos wants to buy a rope to put across the diameter of the pool. If you notice, there is something very different about this problem. We start with circumference, and we have to go backwards to find the diameter. So think about what we did over here in examples 1 and 2. We multiplied the diameter by 3.14 to get a circumference. So what do you think we should do to work backwards? Well, we are going to divide by pi. Instead of multiplying by pi, we're going to divide by pi. So let's set up our formula. C equals pi times diameter. And if our circumference is 662.54 feet, we just plug that into our formula, and we have a one-step equation. You probably noticed that a lot of what we do in math comes back to equations. So we'll solve this by dividing both sides of our equation by pi, or 3.14. And we'll just calculate that real quick. 662.54 divided by 3.14 gives me a diameter of 211 feet. All right, now that's not the end of our problem, because if we look, the rope costs 45 cents per foot, and Carlos needs, that is a typo, needs 4 feet more than the diameter of the pool. So 211 plus 4 equals 215. So Carlos needs 215 feet, and it's going to cost 45 cents for each foot. So we'll multiply that, 215 times 0.45. And we get $96.75. Make sure you are putting your answers in money form. Please don't forget that. It's not just 96.75, it's $96.75. All right, pause here, maybe go back and look at some of the examples if you need to before we talk about area. Okay, so let's talk about how we can find the area of a circle. The formula to find the area of a circle is A equals pi r squared. Now, where did this formula come from? I want you to think about a pie, like an actual pumpkin pie or something, okay? And if you slice this up, okay, if we slice that up, we can rearrange these wedges kind of like this. Kind of like that, and we get this parallelogram. But basically, the more we slice this, the thinner these pieces get. And so eventually, you come out with a rectangular shape when you form those wedges together. If that's a little hard to visualize, come talk to me about this. I have a video that explains it really well that I normally show in class, but just come talk to me and we can, I'll show you that, and it should make a little bit more sense. But basically, the gist of it is that the height of this rectangle is the same as the radius of the circle. And this base right here is the same as half of the circumference of the circle. We know to find the circumference of a circle is 2 pi r. It's one of our formulas. Well, if I divided this in 2, because I want half the circumference, it comes out to pi r. So the base of this is pi r. Well, we know that the formula for the area of a rectangle is area equals base times height. And so if we just multiply our base and height here, pi r times r, that gives us pi r squared. We don't need to know that for a quiz. It's just some fun information that helps you really understand that these formulas do mean something. They do come from somewhere, okay? They're not just arbitrary. They do actually relate to each other. And actually, a lot of shapes do go back and relate to rectangles. All right, so let's look at how we can apply and find the area of a circle. A biscuit recipe calls for the dough to be rolled out and circles to be cut from the dough. The biscuit cutter has a radius of 4 centimeters. And this time we want to find the area of the top of the biscuit once it's cut and use 3.14 for pi. So let's draw that. And let's use our formula. Area equals pi r squared. So all we're going to do is we're going to substitute r with our radius, 4. So pi times 4 squared. And order of operations tells us to do the exponents before we deal with multiplication. So that's 16 pi, or 16 times pi, or 16 times 3.14, since we're using that for pi. And we get an answer of 50.24 centimeters, not inches, centimeters squared. Don't write anything weird where we put like 16 pi squared. We already did the exponent. We're done with that. The only reason I'm putting this square right here is because whenever we deal with area, we're talking about units squared. All right, let's look at our last area question. The most popular pizza at Pavon's Pizza is the 10-inch personal with 1 topping. What is the area of a pizza with a diameter of 10 inches? And we're going to write our answer in terms of pi. That means pi is in the answer. So let's draw that. We have a diameter here, 10 inches. Think about it for a second. What is the radius of this circle? The radius is 5. We don't need a diameter for area. We need a radius for area. So our formula is pi r squared. So that's pi times 5 squared, which is 25 pi. And since we're leaving our answer in terms of pi, we'll leave it at 25 pi. And don't forget inches squared. Okay, go back and review if you need to watch those again. And let's move on to our final section here. This is kind of a really important concept here that I want you to think about, is how we can go from circumference to area and vice versa. Okay, there is a connection between area and circumference. Okay, first of all, they both use radius in their formulas. So let's look here. The circumference of a circle is 43.96 inches. We want to find out what its area is. So think about way up here, way back here on the first page. When we went from circumference to diameter, when we work backwards, we divided by pi. So let's do that same thing. All right, so the circumference is 43.96 equals pi times diameter. We'll divide both sides by pi. So the diameter of this circle is 14 inches. Now, because we need a radius for area, we'll cut that in half, and our radius is 7 inches. So now let's find the area. Area equals pi r squared. So pi times 7 squared, which is 49 pi, which approximates to 153.86 inches squared. So to recap, what we did here is we worked backwards. We worked backwards and divided by pi to get the diameter. And then don't forget that radius is half of the diameter, so we use that radius of 7 to find the area of 153.86 inches squared. All right, lastly, the area of a circle is 28.26 centimeters. What is its circumference? So same thing, nothing really different here, but except that we're going to start with the area formula of pi r squared. So replace a with 28.26 equals pi r squared. Divide both sides by pi. And what we get here is r squared equals 9. Not the radius is 9, radius squared is 9. There's a button on your calculator that looks like this, and we call this the square root. And if you type that in, if you type in 9 and then the square root button, you get r equals 3. And that's the opposite of squaring a number. It's the inverse operation of squaring a number. So our radius here is 3. So now we want to go and find the circumference here. So circumference equals 2 pi r, 2 times 3.14 times 3, and we get a circumference of 18.84 centimeters. If you have any other questions about circles, feel free to come talk to me, especially about why we get this formula or where this formula comes from. I'd be happy to clarify that a little bit and show you that video. But otherwise, have a great day.